Smartest thing Democrats did this year was finding their patriotism again. If you told me a year ago that if Kamala Harris would be the nominee and in her acceptance speech she would use the word privilege, I would not have guessed that she used it the way she did. America's founders, they were the Gen Z of their day. And when they were your age, they started a country. What the fuck have you done?
Bill Maher just dropped a political nuke on the Democratic Party, and their leading candidate, Kamala Harris, got torched. In one of his most savage episodes of Real Time, Maher took aim at his own party, calling them out for pushing anti-American narratives and teaching young people to hate the country. And yeah, this takedown hit hard. The backlash from Democrats was instant, brutal, and full of fire. I've got every clip, every reaction, and every explosive moment lined up. So smash that subscribe button and let's dive right in.
Smartest thing Democrats did this year was finding their patriotism again. If you told me a year ago that if Kamala Harris would be the nominee and in her acceptance speech she would use the word privilege, I would not have guessed that she used it the way she did.
So Maher kicked things off by giving a little credit. He acknowledged that Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz did express love for America. But here's the twist. Their message? It completely flopped with young Democrats. Maher asked the obvious question, why didn't it land? And of course, he didn't hold back. In classic Bill Maher style, he ripped off the Band-Aid and laid the blame right at Kamala Harris's feet. Sure, her words say she loves this country, but Maher says her silence and actions tell a very different story. What followed next? Absolutely brutal. Let's break it down.
Yes, America, the only place in the world where a white guy from the suburbs could become a millionaire rapper, because here every person, regardless of race, class, or gender, has the right to be talent-free. And guess what document allows you to protest and chant, hey, hey, ho, ho, followed by something really stupid? Yeah, Constitution Day was last week. It's an actual federal holiday, but no one noticed, despite the fact that it's probably the greatest legal document ever. Is it flawed? Of course. It was written by humans, and they were all white men, as depicted in this illustration from Google AI. But how about looking at the actual ideas in it? I won't hold my breath for that, because only 14% of 8th graders are proficient in history now, and only 22% in civics, which may be why 4 in 10 Gen Zers say the authors of the Constitution are best described as villains.
Now you might be asking, what do the Democrats really have to do with all these examples? Well, Maher wasn't just ranting, he was setting a trap, piece by piece. And by this point, one thing was crystal clear. The older generation of Democrats, whether they realize it or not, has been nurturing a slow-burning resentment toward America. Maher compared it to a toxic heirloom, passed down from one generation to the next, poisoning the mindset of young liberals. But then, he connects the dots in a way that even the most diehard Democrats can't ignore. What he says next, it lands like a punch to the gut. Get ready.
It's amazing, since in 1776, James Monroe was 18, Alexander Hamilton was 21, and James Madison 25. Joe Biden was only 30. America's founders, they were the Gen Z of their day. And when they were your age, they started a country. What the fuck have you done?
Back in 1776, James Monroe was 18, Alexander Hamilton was 21, and James Madison was just 25. And Joe Biden? Maher jokes. He was already 30. Crowd laughs. Then comes the gut punch. America's founders were the Gen Z of their day. When they were your age, they started a country. What the hell have you done? Maher doesn't hold back. He calls out Gen Z Democrats directly. Yeah, older generations passed down some bitterness, but Gen Z had every chance to think for themselves. Instead, many just echoed the outrage they were handed, never looking past the headlines or the hashtags. And just when it feels like Maher's wrapping up, he flips the table with a shocking truth about where all this resentment really comes from. And it's not what anyone expected.
So no, the Constitution isn't perfect because it wasn't written by Taylor Swift, but... And yes, the founders made excruciating compromises, obviously slavery. But slavery was a deal breaker for the southern states. So there would have been two countries. And then to end slavery in North America, it would have involved invading a sovereign nation instead of having the moral high ground of keeping a union together. Would that have been better? History's complicated, and Gen Z reasoning is not. They think they're pure, but they're really just simplistic. They know two things. White people did some very bad things, and no, that's it. That's all they know. That's what they know.
Everyone agrees. Slavery was horrific. That's not up for debate. But as Maher points out, history isn't this clean, heroic tale we like to package. It's messy, filled with contradictions, flaws, and uncomfortable truths. Our ancestors were far from perfect, but many operated within the moral limits of their time, doing what they thought was right, even if history proved them wrong. And before we rush to judge them, Maher challenges us to take a hard look at ourselves. Because with all our tech, education, moral grandstanding, and AI tools, we still get things wrong, sometimes very wrong. And the scariest part? We often can't even see it yet. Then Maher drops the bomb. Maybe the real threat isn't our past. It's the blind spots we're living with right now.
Well, I know that too. But I also know other things. Like how in 1776, slavery was a lot like flying private today. If you could afford to, you would have done it too. Everybody did it, of all races, throughout history, in the Bible, and all over the world. If you hate George Washington for slavery, are you prepared to hate the woman king? Because her empire was built on it too. And where do you imagine is this place, outside of your brilliant, pure minds, that's so much better than America? At least America self-corrects, a mechanism for which was actually written into the Constitution. The citizens of Gaza cannot assemble in protest of their own government, cannot do or say what they want, or practice whatever religion they want, or have a free press. All rights guaranteed in just our First Amendment.
Bill keeps the pressure on, dropping truth bomb after truth bomb as he dismantles the woke mob's growing contempt for America's founders. But he doesn't just criticize, he obliterates the narrative. Maher points out how this obsession with moral purity ignores the brutal complexities of history. And then, without even pausing, he pivots to something even more absurd: the woke mob's bizarre hatred for America. Paired with blind love for countries that don't offer half the rights or freedoms we have here, Maher doesn't hold back. He calls out the sheer hypocrisy with pinpoint accuracy. These protesters romanticize nations they've never lived in, chant for ideals they barely understand, and scream at a system that, ironically, is the only reason they can scream at all. And here's the kicker. If they actually spent just 1 week under the regimes they worship, they'd be begging to come back. But Maher isn't finished yet, because his next point, it rips the last mask off the movement. And it's the truth the woke mob fears the most.
The irony is, in all this, is that the world the founders birthed, flawed though it may be, provides the bedrock for everything that makes life good for the very people who hate them so much. It's so easy to take for granted individual liberty, a Bill of Rights, the rule of law, checks and balances, getting a trial by jury, the peaceful transfer of power, protecting minority rights, and democracy itself. But those are the things that make our pampered, privileged, bratty lives so relatively cushy. No one starves here. Even our poor people are fat. Not everyone has to be bribed. Anyone can get rich. The cops are flawed, but we're not a police state. The drinks don't make you go blind, and no one pushes you out of a window for a bad Yelp review. Our Our government takes a lot and fucks up a lot, but it also gives a lot. Healthcare, retirement, money, unemployment, disability, college grants, food stamps. Maybe in the blissfully perspective-free mind, this all adds up to a low bar that America has reached. But you have to ask, why do millions of people every year risk their lives to come here? Because they want what we got. The founders were flawed, but they did build a place the whole world wants to break into. No one is paying a coyote to smuggle them into India or Russia. Immigrants don't see us as the problem. They see us as the solution. And there's a reason they kill themselves to get here, and it's not just the ponds full of delicious ducks and geese.